Have you ever wondered if you have enough horsepower to do the job? This picture is pretty funny. I hope they don't have any hills on their path. I wouldn't want to be crushed under the weight of that load. Sometimes we have a hard time telling if our storage systems can support the workloads that are coming on them. Yeah, we can tell if they don't have enough resources because actually we get a call from users that performance is bad. But what if we could tell how much performance bandwidth we had for our workload at any point in time? IntelliMagic, with its over 20 years of experience modeling storage controllers, does a pretty good job at telling you how much performance capacity you have left on your 3-par storage systems. In this demo, I'm going to walk you through some 3-par dashboards that are based on the intelligent ratings. The HP 3-par disk storage system dashboard identifies those key availability risk indicators and disk system metrics. In this view, you actually see a bubble chart summarizing the relative I/O rate and the performance health of the read and write throughput, the overall front-end response time, the front-end read response time, and the front-end write response time. Along the y-axis, we see the different 3-par systems, and along the x-axis, we see those key risk indicators I mentioned. The blue dots represent the relative busyness, the green dots represent areas of low risk, and yellow dots represent some risk, and red indicates there's significant risk of performance impact. The thresholds are based on various modeling techniques to provide a sensible starting point based on the configuration and the workloads. And in this situation, we can see that Monotis 2894_5 is showing some warning around the front-end read response time. The read and write throughput is now the focus. The single line on this chart represents the average total throughput for the storage system Monotis _2894_5. The background color represents the thresholds, where the lighter area indicates a safe area and the system has plenty of room for additional throughput. The light brown warning area just represents area where the threshold for this system is close to being out of throughput capacity, and then the darker area would indicate an exception area. The rating is based on the percentage of observations above the warning or the threshold, exception threshold. In this case, only about 1% of the time are we exceeding the thresholds. What this feature does is it proactively highlights potential areas of performance risk such that a user can investigate the risk and determine appropriate actions prior to this issue impacting production. So let's actually take a look at those throughput thresholds in a bit more detail. You see 4 rows in the table, and the first row is the DSS data rate, megabytes per second. There are columns for the shift, the serial number, the early warning, and performance exception numbers. The early warning is the amount of throughput that the system can safely perform before it runs into potential issues. And the performance exception is the amount the system can do before the system components are saturated. While the defaults are a good starting place, the capabilities will vary between the models, so it's important to customize the throughput thresholds just to make sure they're not too conservative. The second row is the fiber channel data rate per port, and this is the early and performance exception set for the individual ports. These are usually set to a very reasonable number for the defaults, and then the actual early warning and performance exceptions for the HP 3-par system at the DSS level are based on a lower of either the DSS data rate thresholds or the sum of the number of fiber channel ports multiplied by the individual fiber port thresholds. For example, if the DSS data rate early warning threshold is set to 2000 and there are 8 ports active with an individual port throughput of 320, then the cumulative port threshold would be 8 times 320 or 2560 megabytes per second. Since the early DSS warning is lower than 2560, the threshold that will be used would be the 2000 megabytes per second. Well, in conclusion, we know if you have enough horsepower or HP because we have over 20 years modeling storage controllers, and we configure the make and model and the configuration with reasonable default thresholds for every controller. In this case, the customer had plenty of HP, so there was no concerns. Perhaps your workload is different.